Prajajanarani Dana Yato Nandana Prajajanarani Dana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Krishna Bala Girivaradari Jaya Krishna Bala Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Prajajanarani Yashoda Nandana Prajajanarani Yamuna Tira Kanachari Yamuna Tira Kanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhagavatam Satpuri Dakacharya Shanashana Srimad, Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. This confounder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Bhagavatam Satpuri Dakacharya Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, titled Narada Muni, first by Prajapati Daksha, text number 37. It's 6.537. Vernestrivir Muktana.
I just read the base and how it doesn't really sense. Something's stopping my phone.
You got it?
Yes.
All right. Vernestrivir Muktana. Ami Mamsita Karmanam. Vihata Shreyasa Papa. Lokaya Ubayo Yokrita. Renestribira Muktana. Ami Mamsita Karmanam. Vihata Shreyas Papa. Lokaya Ubayo Krita. Vernestri Pir Amuktana. Ami Mamsita Karmanam. Vihata Shreyas Papa. Lokayor Ubayo Krita. Shall I repeat? Vernestri Pir Amuktana. Amam Sita Karmanam. Vigata Shreyasa Papa. Lokayor Vayokrita. Rene. From the depths. Tree B. 3. Amuktanam. Of persons not freed. Amim Amsita. not considering karmanam, the path of duty, vighata, ruin, shreyasa, of the path of good fortune, papa, O most sinful Narada Muni, Lokaya, of the world, Ubayo, both, Krita, done. Translation of Purgatory. Flash Divine Grace, A.C. Dr. Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prajapati Daksha said, my sons were not at all free from their three debts. Indeed, they did not properly consider their obligations. O Narada Muni, O personality of sinful action, you have obstructed their progress toward good fortune in this world and the next, because they are still indebted to the saintly persons, the demigods and their father. Purport. As soon as a Brahmana takes birth, he assumes three kinds of debts: debts to great saints, debts to the demigods, and debts to his father. The son of a Brahmana must undergo celibacy, brahmachari, to clear his debts to the saintly persons. He must perform ritualistic ceremonies to clear his debts to the demigods, and he must beget children to become free from his debt to his father. Prajapati Daksha argued that although the renounced order is recommended for liberation, one cannot attain liberation unless one fulfills his obligations to the demigods, the saints, and his father. Since Daksha's sons had not liberated themselves from these three debts, how could Narada Muni have led them to the renounced order of life? Apparently, Prajapati Daksha did not know the final decision of the Shastras, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Devarshi bhutaptaninam pritnam akinkaronayam verni charajan sarvatmanaya sharyanam gato mukundam paritya kartam. Everyone is indebted to the demigods, to living entities in general, to his family, to the pitas, and so on. And if one fully surrenders to Krishna, Mukunda, who can give one liberation, even if one performs no yajnas, one is freed from all debts. Even if one does not repay his debts, he is freed from all debts if he renounces the material world for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose lotus feet are the shelter of everyone. This is the verdict of the Shastras. Therefore, Narada Muni was completely right in instructing the sons of Prajapati Daksha to renounce the material world immediately and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unfortunately, Prajapati Daksha, father of the Haryashvas and Salavashvas, did not understand the great service rendered by Narada Muni. Daksha therefore addressed him as Papa, personality of sinful activities, and as sadhu, a non-saintly person. Since Narada Muni was a great saint and Vaishnava, he tolerated all such accusations from Prajapati Daksha. He merely performed his duty as a Vaishnava by delivering all the sons of Prajapati Daksha, enabling them to return home back to God. Om Ginatyamanasya Ginanjana Shakaya Chakshmaitavya Tasmai Shri Venam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Sadguru Bhakti Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are continuing with Prajapati Daksha's invectives against Narada Muni, who had liberated both sects of Prajapati Daksha's sons, the Haryashvas, the Salvashyas, into taking the renounced order of life without going through the various previous stages. In the Vedic system, Varnashram system, generally one goes through brahmacharya, the brahmacharya stage of life. Then one gets married into the grihastha stage, and then retires in the vanaprastha stage, and then only then, for brahmanas at least, takes the renounced order of life, sannyas. But Narada Muni induced the sons of Daksha to skip householder and retired life, grihastha and vanaprastha life altogether, and go straight to the renounced order. And Daksha is making the points that these sons of his have debts that they did not pay, namely debts to the saints, the rishis, the demigods, and to him and more generally their forefathers. This sort of view is very different than what is generally accepted in the culture as in many parts, at least the Western world, or at the very least America, in that the West, America specifically, is all about individualism. In that, I just do what I want. I'll make my own way, and consequently, I have no obligations. Nobody can tell me what to do unless I enter into a contract with you. Then there's an obligation because there's some debt that I chose to take on. Uh, but other than that, there is nothing that anybody can force me to do uh, unless I choose to do so, or no other obligations that I have unless I choose to enter into them. There are even some people who are a bit out there who, when they're pulled over by the police or something, for speeding or not having a license plate or registration, their argument against the police is that I never consented to follow the laws. Therefore, I don't have to follow the laws. Uh, that argument, of course, does not convince the police or the courts, but it's indicative of an extreme form of this kind of viewpoint where the only obligations that I have are ones that I uh, freely took on, by signing a contract or something or shaking hands. And everything else, I will, nobody has any claim on me, and I will not take anything from anybody else. I'll not depend on anybody else. You also see this mentality um, in kind of the homesteading movement sometimes. Of course, self-sufficiency is good, but we should realize that self-sufficiency is not total independence either. No matter how independent one is, one always depends on the demigods. Because you can't grow food without the sun, without the rain, without the earth, without wind, without the various potencies in nature, which are controlled by the demigods. So simply by, going and having a meal, one incurs a debt to the demigods, uh, to one's forefathers, one's father and mother, of course. The parents raise the child when um, the child is unable to care for himself, and thus a debt is occurred there. And then also to the saintly persons, insofar as they give instructions about the goal of life, uh, about what is proper behavior and improper behavior, what we actually do here in this world beyond just uh, attending to our uh, grossest material desires. Uh, and in all these ways, we incur debts. So the central point is actually that human life is, for the most part, dependent on obligations to each other from even just a material point of view, because we live in a society. People who don't live in a society uh, don't have all these social obligations or their debts. So somebody, is just a savage sort of person living in the forest, or if somebody is a rishi living in the forest, they aren't, part of a society. So they do not have all of these social obligations that are placed on them by living in proximity to other people. For the rest of us who live with others, uh, we have obligations based on various aspects. In many cases, based on our material identifications or whatever bodily construction that we are inhabiting this time around. Uh, and every culture has things, whether it's Western culture or the Vedic culture. There's always these ideas of different roles in society, and our actions in how we choose to fulfill those obligations. What is proper action and improper action? What duties and what rights do we have? And Prajapati Daksha is arguing to Narada Muni that all of these obligations were not fulfilled in the case of sons. They didn't do any sort of yagya to clear their debts to the demigods. They did, do austerities and become brahmacharis for a time, so that debt to the saintly persons is cleared. But they did not have children. It's become free their debts to the Pitas, the forefathers. So Prajapati Daksha is arguing that Narada Muni made a very grave mistake in prematurely inducing his sons to take up this renounced order of life before fulfilling their societal obligations. And sometimes you see echoes of this mentality even today with the parents of devotees, especially if the devotee has chosen, at least for some time, to live in an ashram setting. Uh, this can be very confusing for parents who uh, come from a more mainstream point of view, let's say. Uh, because the let's say general worldview uh, does not, or in the general worldview, living in an ashram does not make very much necessary. I know I moved into the Mantra Lounge ashram when I was 22. Uh, Pretty soon, relatively speaking, after I moved to Philadelphia for graduate school. So I, you know, quit graduate school, moved into the ashram, and go on books 6 days a week, and not get paid anything, and wake up early in the morning and all that. When I was talking, with my parents on the phone and stuff like that, they were at least externally saying, okay, you can do what you want. But the first time that my father came to visit in person, he's like, well, you know, Jack, uh, your early 20s when you're supposed to be building your career and, finding a relationship and, all of that sort of stuff. Uh, and it's the same mentality as Prajapati Daksha, that, why are you inducing these people to renounce uh, when they should be building up their life. Um, we have even in the Vedic worldview, there's Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, the four goals of human life. After you learn the basic rules of behavior, Dharma, proper and improper behavior, you learn a trade, get a job, uh, and uh, then after you have some success for yourself, you have a career, uh, things like that. Maybe some money saved, maybe some property. Uh, of course, nowadays it's very difficult to buy property, even if one does have money. But in any case, and then you just enjoy, and then you can think about religion, right? But you have to get the job and the enjoyment first. And then, if you want to go to, um, the church or the temple or something one day a week, then great. Uh, and this sort of plan that people have for their children uh, is, as I was explaining, totally sidelined when that child decides to take up devotional service in an ashram setting, in a renounced setting. On the uh, early days of ISKCON, um, this was what gave rise to the perception that ISKCON was a cult. So, how could you uh, induce young people to join your movements where they, don't get paid anything. They have to wake up, at 4 o'clock in the morning or even earlier. They can't eat meat, which, at that time was very unthinkable to the older generations. They don't drink or do any sort of intoxicants, don't gamble, don't have sex. The only way that you could do this is by brainwashing. Uh, and the whole deprogramming movement came from that mentality where they did all sorts of nefarious activities to try to uh, stop the devotees from being devotees. Um, so this was the mentality at the time. This is the mentality of some people, at least now, and this was the mentality of Prajapati Daksha. But Prabhupada is making the point in the purport that automatically, when one takes up devotional service, one's debts to all of these different personalities are automatically cleared. Because Krishna is the root of all existence. The example that is usually given is that if one wants a plant to flourish, one has to water the roots and not the leaves or the stems or anything like that. Uh, and likewise, the way to please all of the various personalities simultaneously is to surrender to Krishna. And then automatically, the demigods and saintly persons, etc., the debts to them will be paid. And if there is any discrepancy or debt left, Krishna will take that on. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, just give up all varieties of dharma and surrender. And that he will deliver us from sinful reactions. So that, even if we feel that there will be some reaction by our surrendering, then Krishna assures us that he will take care of all such discrepancies simply if we surrender to him. Because Krishna is, of course, the controller of everything. And if one surrenders to Krishna, then one does not have to actually uh, worry about anything else. Because Krishna assures us that he will preserve everything that we have and carry what we lack. it's repeated again and again in the verses and purports as well that the Supreme is taking care all living entities, even the uh, animals get their fill of food. So if he's taking care of those, why not the people who are trying to serve him? And in this way of living, the saintly persons are, of course, satisfied because to be saintly means to surrender unto God, to try to please God. The demigods are, of course, all devotees as well. So they want you to surrender to Krishna. And then even one's family is benefited. And we read in the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj that automatically Hiranyakashipu and all of the line of Prahlad Maharaj was benefited simply by his taking up devotional service. Even if uh, the uh, personalities themselves were not so enthusiastic uh, to have their children become devotees. So we might be thinking of all of the various social obligations, debts, etc., that come with living in this world. Whether we think that's to the saintly persons, demigods, pitas, or to our family, society, friends, whatever views we have on the debts that we hold, we should just focus on trying to surrender to Krishna. Because even if we clear these various societal complications, more will arise because that is the nature of the material world. Uh, the nature of the material world is complication. Things just get more and more complicated. Even if things seem to get simpler, it's just a brief lull before they get more complicated again. Now, one might, you know, do one's obligations, perform one's obligations to one's children, and then they grow up, get married, start having families of their own, and then one's mind thinks, "Oh, well, now I have obligations to grandchildren." And then if one lives long enough, maybe great grandchildren. And of course, one should, if one has taken on the grihasta way of life, fulfill one's obligations in that way. But we should always have an eye towards surrendering to Krishna. This is actually the only way to uncomplicate our lives and to uncomplicate the web of social obligations. Is to, as much as we can, and progressively more throughout our lives, surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by taking up the process of devotional service, as explained by Srila Prabhupada in the purports of his books, and specifically in Srimad Bhagavatam. So I think I've said about all that I've had to ramble on about. Any comments, questions, additions, subtractions?
I guess I just have like this little thought in my head that they say that our parents are also our gurus, like our mothers are guru, our fathers are guru. So then there's like a little bit of conflict here, right? Because Prajapati Daksha, as a guru to his children, wanted them to stay in Grihastha ashram, whereas Narada Muni, going for a different path.
Right.
So
The question was that, we read that, our parents are our first gurus. Of course, one should follow the instructions of the guru, but, the instructions seem to conflict. Narada Muni is wanting one thing, and the father is wanting another. So how do we have this conflict? First of all, guru can also just mean teacher, not necessarily spiritual master. But even if we do take it to mean spiritual master in both cases, we could think of the pastimes of Bali Maharaj, because Vamana Dev came to Bali Maharaj, and Bali Maharaj's spiritual master said, "Don't surrender." And what did Bali Maharaj do? Yeah, he rejected that spiritual master, because the guru is supposed to lead us to Krishna. That's the function of the guru. And if one is not forming that obligation, that duty, then that guru should be rejected.
but case with Daksha,
Mhm.
maybe that was his vision of leading his kids, his children, his sons to Krishna through Grihastha, because it's also possible, right? So I mean, just
Yeah, so while Prajapati Daksha might have thought that he was leading his sons, to the mm, perfectional stage of life by the gradual process, by going through the grihastha ashram, dhammapada, etc. The thing is that you also have to look at the mm, personality of the sons and the level of advancement of the sons. Narada Muni could see that the sons of Daksha were at the stage that they could form fully surrendered devotional states in the renounced order of life, and that was better for their Krishna consciousness. While Daksha was in many ways giving instructions based on social conventions, right? Social conventions, and needing the universe to be populated and all of these sorts of things.
yeah, it's very convincing that depends on the personality.
Yeah.
Because it's different ashrams for different like fits, so to say. And so like if Narada Muni saw that actually they will do much better for their Krishna consciousness staying out of family life, then it makes sense that.
Yeah, Prabhupada makes this point in the purports to the pastime of Gajendra. And that, because the point is made in the text that Gajendra was losing because he was a land animal, he was fighting in the water.
Yeah.
Prabhupada makes the analogy that, uh, if you're brahmachari or renowned sort of person, fight in the brahmachari or sannyasa ashrams. If you're not quite able to do that, or if you have a different sort of way of living than fighting the Grihastha ashram. But the point is that you're fighting in the best way that you can.
Yeah.
And Narada Muni could see that the Aryashvas, Savalashvas were best suited for the sannyas. And also there's the point that even if one has multiple instructors, or people who give you instruction, there can also be a sort of hierarchy among them, right? So like if I get an instruction, from let's say Drew or Perry John, and I get a different instruction from my Guru Maharaj, and I'll follow like the one from my Guru Maharaj. It's not, that I reject the instruction of Dhruva and Parijati. They're very senior devotees.
It is highlight.
Yeah, but I've taken shelter at a spiritual master, and that means to follow. Just like the Haryashvas and Salavashyas took shelter of Narada Muni as their guru, as their spiritual master. Do we have anything from our online? Going once. Yeah.
So Prajapati Daksha got that order from Supreme Personality of Godhead to do that?
To Daksha?
Yeah, oh sorry, yeah, Daksha. He got that order to
Uh,
populate. Like
I
that was
think from Brahma.
from Ram, so that was his
Yeah.
service.
Yeah. Yeah, his service was to populate the universe. He was one of the Prajapatis, right? So the Prajapatis,
Yeah.
their service is to become the pati of the projects, right?
It's very interesting how it's shown here because I was thinking why this pastime is even there in one sense. So I was thinking that oftentimes I work with kids when I do, and I oftentimes see that when parents have aspirations,
Yeah.
they put them on their kids, but then oftentimes it's not what
I'm
kids
very
want.
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not only about spirituality. It's just even like one of my friends, she's a musician and she wants her daughter to be a musician, but her daughter has very little interest in that.
Yeah.
But like the mother always like pays like a lot of money for like all sorts of different teachers to come and teach her, and it's like it brings a conflict.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting when you feel like this is the best way, or like you feel it's your service in one sense, then it's kind of like restrains another person's.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a phenomenon. It happens a lot. Parents put pressure on their children to form in a certain way or do a certain thing, or just turn out a certain way. And it usually doesn't work well as far as the children actually turning out that way, or the relationship between the parents and the children. Yeah, to different degrees depending on how much the parent is pushing. Any more comments or questions? 7 minutes left.
Hare Krishna.
Bible.
Yeah, thank you for a very nice class, Prabhu. Just thinking about this verse, Srimad Bhagavatam. There's Srila Prabhupada makes reference to the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th chapter, text 41. which talks about how for one who has surrendered to Mukunda, who gives shelter to everyone, there is no indebtedness to the demigods, the great sages, or ordinary living beings, relatives, friends, forefathers, and so on. Um, this this is also mentioned in. It's actually quoted in the Muddy Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita in the 22nd chapter. The That particular Bhagavatam verse is specifically quoted, and in his purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about these different types of debts, and that there is a standard practice which is supposed to be observed by householders in particular. Um, um, uh, um, a process of yajna, sacrifice, five different kinds of yajnas to liquidate the five kinds of indebtedness. And he explains that uh, all of these obligations are met um, by performing the ultimate uh, yajna, Sankirtan yajna. He says, where is it now? He quotes, by offering oblations with ghee, one satisfies the demigods. By studying the Vedas, one performs Brahma Yajna, which satisfies the great sages. By offering oblations of water before one's forefathers, one performs Pitra Yajna. By offering tribute, one performs Bhuta Yajna. By properly receiving guests, one performs Nir Yajna. These are the five kinds of yajnas that liquidate the five kinds of indebtedness to the demigods, great sages, forefathers, living entities, and common men. Therefore, one has to perform these five kinds of yajnas. But when one takes to the Sankirtan yajna, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, one does not have to perform any other yajna. In Srimad Bhagavatam, now he goes on to a different subject, but his point is that all yajnas are completed, satisfied by the performance of merely Sankirtan yajna. Um, he does, interestingly, he doesn't mention um, surrendering or taking full shelter of Krishna necessarily. He simply talks about the performance of Sankirtan yajna. So, um, I one could speculate. We're not supposed to speculate, but I'm trying to understand then, is Sankirtan Yoga going to be effective in this regard, satisfying all obligations simply by its performance, or must one necessarily have surrendered in Sankirtan Yoga to Krishna, taking full shelter of Krishna? But I get the impression that that's not the case, that by the performance of Sankirtan Yoga, whether you are surrendered, whether you have fully taken shelter of Krishna or not, by the performance of Sankirtan Yoga, you meet all other obligations. That's that at least is my understanding. Anyway, I thought I would make some mention of that. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, I have heard also. I remember reading that Sankirtan Yoga stands in for these various yogas that one performs in householder life. Uh, yes, Prabhupada says there, Sankirtan Yoga, he says here, full surrender to Krishna. Yeah, and I guess if you do one, then you might be on the path to the other anyway. So the debts are paid. So if there's no last minute anything, I think we will end here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki